Sometimes in our computing life, we actually make use of software without realizing that we are using a particular piece of software. And one very good example of this is FFmpeg. FFmpeg is actually a command line utility, and its job is to do file format conversion. And in that process, it can also do a number of cool things. Now, because of the license of FFmpeg, it is actually included in certain other pieces of software, to do its job in the background. And as a result, you may or may not realize that it's actually that. But in fact, it is. So what we're going to do today is we are not only going to give FFmpeg the recognition it deserves, we're going to learn how to actually use it from the command line. That is the plain vanilla FFmpeg running on your computer from scratch. So yeah, I hope this interests you. After learning how to use FFmpeg, I've actually found it quite useful and indispensable in many situations. So yeah, I hope you think the same. You're watching another Random Wednesday episode on 0612 TV. Hello and welcome back to another Random Wednesday episode. So, FFmpeg, a very interesting tool. Let's begin by learning how to install it. We'll then move on to the basics, and then to some more interesting things you can do with this piece of software. Of course, as it turns out, it is much more than a file format converter. But yeah, like I said, we'll see it when the time comes. First, of course, is how do we install this program? Well, you can find a download link in the video description. It will send you to the download page on the official FFmpeg site. You realize right off the bat that things are a little bit complicated because there are 3 different versions of FFmpeg you can choose from. But they do tell you that, if you have no idea what you're supposed to do here, just pick the static version. So that's what we're gonna do. Basically, the idea is the static version contains all of FFmpeg in one .exe file, which for our purposes is the most convenient. So I would recommend that as well. Go ahead and download the latest version for whatever bitness your computer is, and you'll realize that what you end up with is an archive. Open the archive in an archive manager of some sort. If you don't have one, you can check out pzip, which I will also link to in the video description. Within the archive, enter the bin folder and look for FFmpeg. That's really the only file you need. So extract that to some location that you can remember, and we can begin converting. Now, if you intend to use FFmpeg from anywhere on your computer, you might want to, save it somewhere important, like in a program files folder, and then link to it using the path variable. So what you're seeing on screen right now are the steps I've used to do that. I do actually have things set up this way because, well, it's just easier for me. Of course, this step is optional, so if you don't want to do that, then make sure FFmpeg is in the same folder as the video files you want to work with. With that out of the way, let's move on to the fun part, and that is to actually convert files with FFmpeg. Now, previously to this, I know I mentioned videos repeatedly, but as it turns out, FFmpeg can also work with images and audio. Basically, well, it's a command line utility. You just tell it what file to process and what kind of output you want, and it just does it. That's how amazing it is. So let's actually try a very simple example first of taking a video file and converting it from AVI to MP4. Now, what you're seeing here is a folder in which I have staged the files I want to work with throughout this video. You can open a command line very quickly on a Windows computer by first making sure no files are selected, then hold down Shift, right click empty space, and then click on Open Command Window here. That's convenient because the command window opens in that particular folder, so you can get started right away. Here's what FFmpeg syntax looks like. You start off by saying FFmpeg, then you say -i, which means I'm about to specify an input file, and then you go ahead and specify the input file. So what we want to do here is we want to convert an AVI file to MP4. So simply all you have to do is to actually press space and type out the new name of the file, making sure that the extension is MP4. Hit enter, and well, off it goes. FFmpeg is now converting an AVI file to MP4. by just looking at the file extension of the file name you gave it. That is how simple FFmpeg actually is, and a lot of the times when we want to convert between different file formats, that's really all you need to do. But, well, the time will come when you want to do something more complex, and that is where the command switches start to come in. Probably the first thing that concerns you would be the quality of the file. You would probably want to be able to tweak up the quality, and what I'm going to show you here works for MP4 and AVI respectively. Let's start with AVI. Now, there is a factor in image compression called the quantizer that actually affects file quality, and it is linked to how we should choose a bitrate when it comes to variable bitrate encoding. But we won't go into too much detail about that. Basically, all you need to know is that the quantizer is a number. The smaller the number, the higher the quality. Of course, the higher the quality, the higher the file size. So that's a trade-off you need to work with. To set the quantizer for an output AVI file, all you have to do is, well, you call FFmpeg, you specify the input, and then you type -q, followed by a number. This number is of course the quality setting you want. Numbers between 20 to 30 is common, but if you want a very high quality video, you can go as low as the single digits. If you want it to be lower quality, you can go as high as 50. Experiment. You'll be able to see the difference in the different settings you choose. Do note that this only works when you are writing a file with a .avi extension. If you're doing this for MP4 files, then you want to specify the CRF value instead. So instead of -q, you type -crf and then enter your number. I think this exists on a slightly different scale from the -q flag, so yeah, be careful of that. The values are not necessarily the same. Once again, experiment, look at the file size, look at the quality, and decide whether you want to bump it up or down. If you prefer finer control, you can also specify the exact bitrate of the output file. Now, bitrates work for both audio and video in a file, so you'll probably want to tell it whether you want this to work on the video channel or the audio channel. And to specify this, you want to enter a colon and then type V or A, depending on which stream you want to target. Then give it a number. For example, if I want the video quality to be 1000K, which is actually quite low, well, you can do that. I can even specify both audio and video bit rates at the same time, and that will fix the two bit rates of the two different streams. This is of course only if you want finer control. So yeah, for the vast majority of use cases, I'd say, what you've learned so far covers your bases. But let's say we want to go a step further. Let's take a look at FFmpeg filters just for fun. Now, here's the deal. FFmpeg actually comes bundled with a whole bunch of different filters, and they all have various effects on the video itself. What I've done is through the whole list of video and audio filters, I've picked a total of 5 to go through with you. 2 of them are for audio, and the remaining 3 are for video. And these are the things you probably do the most often. So yeah, let's take it from the top. We're going slideshow mode once again because we've overrun. Let's quickly jump through the 5 filters. First, let's tweak the volume. To do this, simply add the following flag to the FFmpeg call. The flag itself says we want to use a filter on the audio channel, and its parameter says that we want to call the volume filter with a setting of 2. The number we provide is actually a multiplier, so when we say volume equals 2, we are actually doubling the volume. You can of course use decimal volumes, including values smaller than 1 to reduce the volume. Next, channel remapping. Sometimes we accidentally record with a mono mic into a stereo track, causing the sound to only go to the left channel. We can easily fix this by mapping the audio from the left input channel to both the output channels. That's what this command call means. The left channel is 0 and the right channel is 1. So what we're doing here is mapping the input left channel to the output left channel, and then the input left channel to the output right channel, thus creating an audio track that has sound on both sides. Let's move on to the video filters. First, cropping. The syntax looks like this. Notice how we say filter:V because we now want to target video. We then say crop and specify up to 4 parameters. The first two are width and height, which specify the width and height of the output. The two remaining parameters are optional and they specify the upper left corner of the cropping. If unspecified, the cropping is centered. You can use arithmetic for this as well. For example, this statement means that we want to crop the video to 2/3 of its original size. The variables in_w and in_h are available, referring to the input width and height respectively. Next, video scaling. This looks very similar to the first two parameters of the crop filter. Use w and h to set the width and height of the output. You can also use arithmetic like with cropping. The variables in_w and in_h are also available here. In addition, if you like proportional scaling, you can specify -1 for one of the input parameters. Its value will be determined from the length you do provide. Finally, rotation. Simply say rotate equals and specify your angle. Unfortunately, your angle needs to be specified in radians. Luckily, it's not that hard, since you can just multiply it by the constant pi over 180. So the following statement refers to a clockwise rotation of 45 degrees. The result of this operation looks something like this. And there you have it. We've actually gone through a pretty comprehensive beginner's guide to installing and using FFmpeg, and we've even taken a look at some complex features in the form of some filters. But I've barely scratched the surface. Like I said, FFmpeg has a whole host of filters, and if you want to look at the full list, I will include the link in the video description so you can find out more. That's all there is for this particular episode. It does look like I've overrun a bit, so sorry about that. But hopefully you found this video insightful anyway. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, you're watching 0612 TV. Thank you very much for watching. If you liked this video, consider checking out the rest of my work on my channel. Alternatively, you may be interested in a playlist of my earlier work on computing and computer science topics. If you'd like to show me some monetary support, I am on Patreon. You can find a link to my campaign in the video description. Of course, you can simply like this video or leave a comment. I'll be sure to respond as soon as I can. To keep in touch with my future uploads, do subscribe to this channel. And for even more updates, check out the official Twitter account for this channel at 0612TV. Thank you for your support.